Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, welcome to House General and Housing. Today is Wednesday, May 7th. And today what we're going to do is hear 125, S-125, which is an act relating to collective bargaining rights. And then at 10 mid-morning, we are going to discuss H-461, which is an act relating to employee access to unpaid leave. That bill is in the Senate still, but it is about to go on notice on the Senate floor. And we're just simply going to discuss what's in it. We won't have possession of it until the Senate actually sends it over here. And then it gets referred to us, and then we have possession. And but this is a preview, if you will. Then at 11, we're going to take a tour, our first tour, and it's just of the dome, the inside of the dome, and it is not generally accessible. So there are several members of the committee who will not be able to go, unfortunately. I have also asked several people to help us see if we could have a tour of affordable housing projects in Montpelier. And those are, depending on the weather, theoretically within walking distance of each other, but we will have several of us driving so that those who don't want to walk, any significant distance. For example, one of them is the one over the transit center, the housing, that's very interesting. And one of them's up here, but it's a good bit of walking. And so for those who don't want to walk or can't, and I'm one of the ones who's not into walking too much, we'll make sure that we have cars. Yeah.
Is this all affordable housing, or 20% of it is?
It's the housing developments that we'll look at, I don't know whether they're entirely affordable or mixed use. We'll see.
Okay.
Would you affirmatively like to see one that's mixed use if we can get it? That's here. Okay. Let me see what I can do. So this is S-125, which we have discussed. And Sophie, could you just remind us what's in the bill and what isn't and where we are? And then we'll have committee discussion and perhaps vote.
So Sophie Sadatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel. And today we're just looking at draft 2.1. Do you want me to go ahead and put that up?
Yeah.
So we had reviewed the proposed.
You might make it a little bigger.
Please and thank you. We had reviewed proposed edits yesterday, so I can go through all of them if you want, but I was going to otherwise just focus on the one change from yesterday. If that works. I handed out just a chart that just shows overall what the changes are from S-125 as it came over from the Senate.
This is great.
And so if you remember, what we were doing is adding the higher showing of interest to decertify a union to all 7 of the Labor Relations Acts here in Vermont. And it was flagged that we had missed one section under the State Labor Relations Act. And so this is just adding in section 1581. And this is on page 6. And this just adds in that, because right now the current language is, again, this 30% showing of interest. So this just makes clear that if you're looking to say that the current labor organization representative of the union is no longer recognized by the employees, or they no longer want that particular union in, then again, the showing is not less than 50% plus one of the employees. So that just adds that section in, and it retains the section that was in the version we looked at yesterday, which is the other place in the State Labor Relations Act where it talks about the percentage. So this was already in there yesterday, but it was really just to add this 1581 in there to make sure that we were capturing all the places where a percentage amount for showing of interest is included. I don't know if there's much more to say on that, but I'm happy if there's any questions.
So this now reflects changing the decertification in the various acts, right? And it reflects
So big picture, what the proposed amendment to S-125 is it's removing the 4 workers' compensation provisions because those have now gone over into S-117. It's deleting the certified payroll for state construction projects. It's retaining the judiciary supervisors being able to organize and collectively bargain. It's retaining the showing of interest under the State Employees Labor Relations Act, and then it's adding in that same higher threshold in the other 6 acts. That's the big picture, what the amendment is doing.
Thank you. First of all, any questions of Sophie just about the draft? I'm about to ask for final discussion and possible vote, but we did discuss each of these at some length and took straw polls to some extent. And then one of our members who wasn't there for one of the straw polls, his vote was represented by the vice chair, told us what it would be.
I said I could only assume the only one I spoke for was Rep. Krasnow.
What was the question?
It was, I think that we had 2 straw polls that you left. And the last one was
Certified payroll.
certified payroll, which,
I think it's a great idea.
okay. So, any questions of Sophie? Any further final discussion on this bill, which we have had before us? We now have 2 of the 3 items that were initially in the bill. One, the certified payroll is not. Well, in that case, I think we should proceed to a vote. Clerk, did you call the roll on this?
Someone has to make a motion.
That's right. You want to make it, Emily?
Yeah, sure. I make a motion to approve draft, Sophie,
3.1,
3.1,
2.1.
oh, 2.1
Of S-125.
of S-125. Can I get a second?
Second.
I just want to remind Representative Krasnow that this will be your 3rd time voting remotely and,
Yep,
okay,
I'm on it.
okay. All right, Representative Bartley,
Yes.
Representative Burrows,
Yes.
Representative Charlton,
Let's pause for just a moment. We are doing a roll call on S-125.
Yeah.
Which is, as yesterday, it's 2 of the 3 items. It's,
The first 2.
yeah, it's not, it'll answer.
I the one. The language.
Making it universal.
Yeah.
1581, just putting that language in there.
And making it across the board for the other
Yeah.
Yes.
bargaining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
just in time, Representative Dodge,
Yes.
Representative Dalton,
Yes.
Representative Howard votes yes, Representative Krasnow,
Yes,
Representative of Vermont is absent. Representative Parsons,
No,
Representative Pezzo,
Yes.
Representative Mahali,
Yes. Did you call Elizabeth?
8,
Did you call Elizabeth? Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah.
8, 2, 1.
All right. Let me think, do I have a volunteer for who would like to be a reporter of this bill? It will go out on the floor. I think if it goes out, remind me, everyone, it'll go out tonight, well, it'll be on notice tomorrow, right? If it goes out tonight, it will be on notice tomorrow.
So,
And then
does it have to go to appropriations?
I don't believe so.
I think that's just.
Didn't we say?
It's originally had an appropriation.
Yeah. Okay, then it'll get referred
sure
to.
next
week.
Okay, so we can
Either
worry
way.
about, but think about who gets volunteered to do this, okay?
You mean voluntold?
Yeah, I need
Trying to
volunteers.
figure out why Emily is not jumping to volunteer.
Well, Emily, I said.
Well, I
think
feel
about-
like I just had airtime, so I'm not like I'm trying to let other people have the opportunity. If people feel vehemently against doing it, I can, but I'm trying to let other people have opportunity for floor time as well.
You're so kind, Emily.
Right? That's what they say.
That provoked a lot of laughter in the room, Emily.
Yeah, I know it did. That's why I
It's
said
her
it.
birthday eve.
Yeah, it's my
Yes,
birthday eve.
All right,
So I'm
um,
resting, but yeah, so I would love to have other people have the opportunity if they would like, but if no one wants to do it, I'm not gonna let it go.
Right,
We
by the
also
way,
have the
just-
housing bill and other
Right.
things.
yeah. By the way, Tom asked me this question this morning. I do want to review it since we have a moment. So 127, our bill,
Housing.
the housing bill. Is now with Ways and Means, and I testified. Edie testified, Representative Branning and I both testified, and I think they must have had half a dozen people. I was asked, I focused more on like the guardrails, what did we do about affordable housing? What did and didn't do? What did we do about tier 2? Those kinds of things. And then I was asked, well, what do you think of the whole thing of CHIPS? And I tried to explain that I thought that CHIPS would be not only not a bad thing, but actually a good thing for the education fund over time. Because in Vermont, I don't think that we're going to have a lot of activity without this kind of subsidy. So that a parking lot with weeds is likely to stay a parking lot with weeds for a long time without help, and that the ed fund would be better. Then, so it's there. They're talking about all kinds of things. I mean, they may want more reports back. They may want a sunset. They may want to put in more affordable housing stuff. I explained that what we had done and that it was actually, I explained that what the definitions were and that if they wanted to put in a priority, they could do that. If they wanted, I explained that we had created this split and they've wanted, in the split in the level of subsidy of how much of the
Credit.
tax increment you could take, and if they wanted to work with that. So I generally, and I think they're going to hear more testimony about that today. What I'm hopeful of, but I don't know, is that changes like will be confined to that kind of thing rather than some basics like denial. if it gets out of their committee, which I anticipate it will, it then goes to approach. So they have to vote it out, given their schedule by tomorrow.
Who, Ways and Means?
Ways and Means. So then it goes to approach. Hopefully tomorrow, although it might be Friday. Approach, here's it. I think if that happens, we're talking about it being on the floor next week. Which is important because the Senate bill, which is, excuse me, our bill, which is in the Senate, is still in committee. They have not quite got it out. But I think they will in the next day or two. So I think that if we're going to need a conference, it will happen late next week. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this could happen. We'll see. Okay. We're a bit early, but
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to interrupt. We need to figure out who's reporting the bill, so Mary
Yeah,
can
do
finish
we-
her very important job of clerking and
right,
finishing the
so we
paperwork.
have to, for purposes of, so we have to decide who's doing that. I'll tell you what, we will decide that. Mary, we may have to take a break before we decide that, okay? But we'll decide that, okay. And the person who's reporting it, because the person has to report it out, even if it's just going to wait, even if it's just going,
Mm-mm.
then,
No, so what will happen,
Report
it
it
will, if
after.
after it goes, it will go on the notice calendar tomorrow. Then it will be committed to appropriations.
right,
But
but I
we-
have to tell Nigel
Yeah,
now.
so
who
Mary
the
has to
report-
write
who
who the
the
reporter
reporter
is
is.
on that piece of paper.
Okay, we'll do that, yes.
I nominate Leonora.
Oh,
I
said it. Oh, great.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
do you want to split it?
Absolutely not. Any other bill, not this one.
Okay, cool.
Any
Awesome.
other bill, I'll remember that, okay,
Yeah, I'm gonna
Oh.
remember that.
yep.
Need I remind the committee of 461?
Yeah,
Representative
that's true.
Cradnell?
That's fair. All right. That's fair.
Okay, so,
61
we're
is-
gonna talk to you, you're gonna have to write it, you know what you need to write, Nigel?
I can write you the email.
She'll write you the email.
I'm not, but I have people.
And you have to do that, you have to send him that. You know, as soon as she gets the, when we take a break, send him the email. okay?
Gotcha.
And I just forwarded it to Representative Howard and Magali, because I didn't know who the reporter was. But Magali has it.
Essentially, you're saying the vote that you're doing it and the vote,
I'm ready.
Yeah.
you're doing it.
Yeah.
and- Okay.
10-1, I'm gonna report Phil.
And the bill itself, and you send it to Nigel. And then I actually always walk over there at some point and tell
Okay,
him, believing in face to face. All right, why don't we move on to H 461, which is employee access to unpaid leave. Sophie, can you walk us through the bill? First of all, it's been a long time, so I think you want to refresh the memory of the group. And
461 on the side by side of the, oh, you broke up?
It.
Oh.
are there being,
The bill is being printed now.
Good.
And now everyone can two side by side.
It's out of an abundance of caution.
I'll give you this one for now.
no, you take that. I'm
Well,
sorry.
Joe doesn't have one,
Oh,
but
okay.
he's not here, so you can take. it. Oh, there's one for Joe. Good. We need one for Sadia.
Thank you, Sophie.
Right, so 461 was the expansion of,
Put it up.
Well, I was going to just explain what it was first.
Okay, go ahead.
It was the expansion of parental and family leave in Vermont. And again, the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act provides a floor at the federal level, and then Vermont's Parental and Family Leave Act sort of expands on that. And then H461 does several things. So one is it expands the definition of family members to be more inclusive, particularly for non-traditional LGBTQ plus families, non-traditional family arrangements. And then it adds, it doesn't extend the amount of leave that's available to employees. What it does is it makes that leave, that unpaid leave, can be used for additional purposes. So the additional purposes recognized in 461 are bereavement leave, safe leave for those experiencing domestic violence, and then qualifying exigency leave, which is a military leave, which actually is provided for at the federal level. This just is including the federal provision into the state act. It's not really expanding on that. So that was the general thrust and purpose of H461. So there were a number of changes that came about in Senate Economic Development. So I will go through those. So there was no change to the purpose. There was no change to the definition of bereavement leave, domestic partner. There was a change to the definition of domestic violence. And what occurred was just the addition of the reference to abuse in 15 BSA 1101. And the purpose for that, this was a request. There were a number of these changes. And the request was from the Vermont Network that deals with domestic violence and sexual assault and stalking. And they requested the definitional changes because they felt these particular statutory citations were more inclusive of the kinds of abusive behaviors that people experience. So that was one.
Was there, I might ask, what was there before? Was there any definition?
So before it was just has the same meaning as in 15 BSA 1151. So this is just adding in the definition of abuse in 15 BSA 1101.
Okay, all right.
So there was no change to the definition of employer. So employee, the addition was adding in the service requirements set forth in 29 Code of Federal Regulations 825.801. That is to do with flight crews, so pilots, flight attendants, navigators, folks that fly your planes. And they're limited under federal law to only being able to fly 1,000 hours a year. And so there are special rules under the Family and Medical Leave Act regarding their eligibility to be covered under the Family Medical Leave Act. And so there was a request to extend the Parental and Family Leave Act in Vermont to be able to cover airline flight personnel. So this would, by adding that language, or meets the service requirement set forth in 29 CFR 825.801, would just incorporate in flight crews.
I do have a question about that. I'm fine with that. I understand it. What I understand it to be is that this is a profession which, for safety reasons, we don't allow them to work more than a certain number of hours, which ordinarily would disqualify them. And this puts them in. Are there other employees who are like that besides flight crews?
I don't know, but I do know that flight crews have very special federal regulations around them because of those specific limitations. And just the way their hours are calculated is different. So there's an elaborate sort of federal scheme on how you do that. Like, for example, taking intermittent leave. So right now, under both the federal and the state law, you don't necessarily have to take your unpaid leave in one big chunk. You can take it intermittently if you're, dealing with something, I don't know, like a domestic violence, a counseling appointment that you have once a week on an afternoon. You could take 3 hours of leave towards your total on an intermittent basis. But for example, if you're part of an airline crew, if you take any kind of intermittent leave, it counts as a full day. You can't do like a 2-hour physical therapy appointment. It's like a full day. So just the calculations are different. So I don't know off the top of my head if there are other special regulations like that at the federal level, but this was something that the airline pilots brought forward. So,
I just add because I wouldn't be surprised
Truck drivers.
to find that there are other professions where they are prohibited from working more than a certain number of hours because of safety. And I guess I'm not suggesting that we could expand this, but I'm just wondering about that.
I think in other, and this is a very broad generalization, and I could be wrong. I believe the difference between like FAA regulations is that it's encompassing of an annual total.
Yeah.
Versus I think like with truck drivers, it's a weekly total. Which then it depends on how it's calculated towards the end of the year.
Yes,
Is air traffic control included?
no, this is the folks that literally are on the planes. So it's the flight attendants, the pilots, the co-pilots, the navigators. I don't remember what the other ones are. Engineers, flight engineers. I'm not sure what they do, but
I noticed that, this is for companies with with 10 employees or few or more. And I wondered whether you know off the top of your head, what size company has access to this work to the governor's family leave program.
And then, okay, so I will start by saying, as of right now, in my understanding, because I just got something in the mail yesterday, that the Hartford group, that is now available to anyone within the state. So if you wanted,
Any size company.
like any individual, if I wanted to pay that insurance myself, I could sign up for it and I would be covered. So that's just a caveat, and that's something that we had known was going to be coming down the
and now it's
pipeline.
happened, right?
And now it has happened, so I can probably very quickly find out. It just give me like 5 minutes.
Well, if it's available to every individual in the state.
I'm
then-
assuming it's everybody,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say, yes, it is everybody without knowing. So let me just double check.
How does, I mean, that's a separate conversation. How does one certify if one purchases that as an individual, how does one? Never mind.
Yeah, we'll
I
have to
don't
look
know
at
the
the
answer, so
contract, yeah.
we can
have to
chat
look
about
at the
that.
Contract. With private insurance, it's all in the contract. And if you ever want to know any reason why you're not covered, just read the contract. Okay, so that's employee, and we've added that. Please proceed.
there was significant concern in Senate Economic Development around the definition of in loco parentis. And so it's in loco parentis is included as a definition because it's then used in the definition of family member. So it's a sort of definition within a definition. And so the Senate Economic Development deleted, there was a second sentence there in subsection 9 that said financial support is not a requirement for this relationship, recognizing caregiving roles beyond traditional definitions. And so there was a request to remove that second sentence and just keep it as what you see on the screen, which is in loco parentis means a relationship in which an individual has day-to-day responsibilities to care for and support a child regardless of biological or legal ties.
So before, could you go over that one more time?
Yeah, so the previous language, there was a second sentence that said financial support is not a requirement for this relationship, recognizing caregiving roles beyond traditional definitions.
And their problem was that was
There
vague.
was a concern it was too open-ended or employers wouldn't know what that meant or, so, I mean, this definition is sort of the traditional definition of in loco parentis. So they were comfortable with leaving this piece in.
I'm gonna ask your probably least favorite question, because I it's an opinion question. If you can't answer it, please let me know. I think the purpose of, or the intent behind this bill is to make sure that it is inclusive of all individuals and all family conglomerates. Do you believe that this is still inclusive language?
Yeah, I don't think it makes a significant
Okay.
difference. I think in fact, you could probably have eliminated it altogether if that was an issue, because there is just an understanding of what the term in loco parentis means. I mean, it's
Okay.
just a common, legalistic Latin, but so again, the definition itself of family member, I'm just scrolling back to that, hasn't changed. And again, where in loco parentis shows up, it's really in relation to, a child to whom the employee stands in loco parentis, regardless of legal documentation. An individual to whom the employee stood in loco parentis when the individual was under the age of 18 years old. I don't think it's really changing.
And hypothetically, anybody can stand in local parentis.
Right, I mean, it's that you're taking responsibility for the child and, before it said, again, that financial support wasn't a requirement. But again, if you're providing those day-to-day responsibilities to care and support for a child, I don't think the mention of financial support is.
I agree. I mean, I would think, I mean, I'm expressing an opinion, but since we're going item by item by item,
Opinion.
yeah, by item, it would seem to me that day-to-day responsibility to care for and support a child is pretty clear. And
And it says
someone who wasn't doing anything except paying child support wouldn't fit in there.
And it says regardless of biological or legal ties, so I think that's really where it's.
I don't know if you could see a hand.
Oh,
Sorry.
we can't right now, but thanks for saying something.
It's just, that's good, pop up, yes.
Hello. I was
Not
gonna
only
say.
that, you're very little when, you're very little tiny screen when.
Oh
as
yeah, on the
opposed-
side.
Yeah,
Well, Mark mentioned his intent. I can speak to intent as well, and I think that it is good, and have not heard any differently from many of the folks, and obviously that was one of the most important parts of this bill, so I wanted to make sure the same thing, that it still was intact, and I believe that it remains with the intent. So I feel
Perfect.
comfortable about that, because yes, that is a huge part of this.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks.
okay, go ahead. I guess we can go full screen again here with the document.
Okay. So safe leave, before it included language, allowing,
Where are you?
page 6, allowing an employee, subsection 12 of the definitions, allowing an employee to attend a hearing for an order against stalking and sexual assault. And that's been deleted from the definition of safe leave. And the reason for that is that it's currently in the statute under the court leave provision, which is at the end of this document. Section 5, what was section 5. So what the domestic violence advocates were recommending was to take it out of the definition here and just keep it in the current statute, which is where it currently is located. The benefit of doing that is, one, it just keeps all the court hearings kind of together, but also it means that somebody that needs to go to court to get a protective order against stalking or sexual assault actually would not then need to use the 12 weeks of unpaid leave. That's a separate form of leave that they're entitled to. So that has come out of the safe leave definition, and just is going to remain where it currently is in the statute. But there was an additional language to add in, which was this Roman numeral 5 in the middle here, which was to respond to a fatality or near fatality related to domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, either for themselves or for a family member. And that was just something that came up in the course of the conversation, just given how much time those situations can take. Obviously, if the employee is the fatality, they're not going to be using the time, but more for family members. But again, if it's a near fatality, then the employee might. But this was just to recognize that there can be significant time involved if you experience something like that or a family member does. And then before I forget, I think it was in subsection 4, just adding, it was for this one, subsection 6, Roman subsection 6, And that was just to add the language either for themselves or for a family member, just to be consistent with the other subsections in here. For some reason, we hadn't put that in. But as you can see, the others, all these subsections refer to the employee or the employee's family member. And we didn't have that for meeting with the state's attorney or law enforcement officer. So that was added in. Any questions on? And then the two definitions of sexual assault and stalking. Again, this was a request from the Vermont Network to change the reference from the criminal statute more to the domestic violence, because the belief being that these include more of the abusive behaviors and controlling behaviors that people experience, and also these statutes get updated more frequently. So the committee was comfortable with switching out from the Title 15 to Title 12 for those two definitions.
So this definition is a civil, in the civil, it's not.
The domestic violence, yeah.
It's not in the criminal code, okay.
And then getting into the leave, the one change here was to do with bereavement leave. There was concern around the length of time, the 2 weeks, and a concern about the impact that might have on, particularly on small employers, if an employee was out for 2 weeks. And so where the committee landed was keeping the 2 weeks, but saying that an employee could use not more than 5 work days taken consecutively, and then the other 5 days can be used again to be dealing. If you go back to the bereavement leave definition, you can use it also if you have to deal with the settling the estate, going to court, those kinds of things. So that is still available, but they limited the number of days you could take consecutively to 5 days.
Where is it? Where is that?
Subsection 2 that's up on the screen. And on the chart, it's in section 3.
Not more than 5 work days to be taken consecutively, yes.
Can I just ask for clarification? So no more than 5 consecutive days. I take that. In 2 months, I have to do something, work settling the estate. But for some reason, there's travel involved, and then I have to take another 5 consecutive days. Is that okay? As long as there's a break between.
Thank you. Just to clarify as well, 5 business days, right?
Yeah, so it says work day. So if it was Thursday, Friday, and then it could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the following week. Because again, it was understanding it could be over a weekend, and again, travel. It can be challenging to do that on 1 or 2 days.
Would it be good to define that as business days? Because sometimes people don't know how to count days.
So it says work days.
But what if you work 6 days a week?
I think then within the spirit of this, those would still count as work days.
Okay.
Because the goal from the committee was just the concern for small employers on having somebody being out.
Okay. I'm fine.
And then there was a concern around how are employers going to know about the family relationship that qualifies someone to take the leave. And so language was added in this sentence here, so I can get it all on the screen. You'll not be able to. Anyway, if is at the beginning there. If the leave is for a family member, the employer may request documentation identifying the qualifying family relationship. So that was added in. So again, if it's obvious, it's your mother, your child, whatever, but if it's one of the more removed family members, that the employer could ask for some documentation around that. And then there was no change.
Yeah, I do have a question about that. Seems very reasonable to me, but I'm not sure how one documents some of these relationships.
Because
In other words, how does one document? Let's say, I live with my lover and we have a kid and we're not married and we share an apartment together. What's documentation?
And I think it could also be self-attestation. It's just a question of essentially the employer can ask, so instead of just saying, I'm gonna be out because, Mary Jo has an issue, they could be like, and Mary Jo is.
Yeah,
And I've never gone through a leave process with anybody where they haven't had to fill out relationship.
uh-huh.
Like if obviously if they themselves are going out for their own personal leave, they just,
Say so.
it's different paperwork. But so if it's like a family member or somebody
So
supporting,
they just-
it literally just says like relationship
And they can.
and they can put in whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if it's something outrageous, then the employer would have the ability to say like, let's say, hey, your neighbor's second grandchild doesn't really make sense for this.
Yeah,
Right. I think it's just to give employers some flexibility to clarify who's being, who the relationship is for.
okay.
I don't think all employers do that.
You think
I don't think all employers do that. When I've had to take leave,
some don't ask,
they don't ask.
but this allows them to, but
Yeah.
it doesn't require them to. Okay,
Right, and then section 4, the short-term family leave, that didn't change. And then section 5 was deleted, and again, that was the, so it's not in here any longer, but that was the section which was to do, it had deleted the going to court to get the protective order from stalking and sexual assault. But as that's now not in the safe leave definition, that's going to stay in the court leave section. So that section's now deleted because there are no changes.
the section that deleted it. Is now
Court
not-
leave is deleted.
Right, the section that deleted is deleted. Got it?
Yep.
In other words, to be clear, this is with respect to safe leave.
This is, so under current law, there's for sort of crime victims leave, court leave, it's got different names to it. But essentially there's a provision that allows people to take unpaid leave to go to court in order, and it includes in that, one of the things you can do is go to court to get a protective order against stalking or sexual assault. And so what the bill originally included in this committee was it took that opportunity out of the court leave bill and put it into the safe leave definition to say
This
you can use
reverses that.
right, this just reverses that change. And again, so one of the benefits for the victim of domestic violence is that the court leave it's not counted towards the 12 weeks of unpaid leave. So it just gives a little bit more flexibility to a victim that has to go to court to get an order. They then would remain under the existing statute.
And I'll just say as the, proponent of the bill, this was just, I don't want to say an error on my behalf. I just didn't connect it was a quick process. So the advocates discussed this after, and it makes it better in my opinion. So I'm glad that this was caught. And so, part of the two chambers. And so I think this is much better safe leave and aligns with, as Sophie mentioned, what it currently is. So it's it feels even better to me, this section. So I was happy that happened. It just was like whisked out and then was like, oh no. So I'm very happy with that section.
Please proceed.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
So these are the differences. Committee, we do not, it's quite possible that the bill that will come to us will be identical to this. It is not assured, but it is possible. So I think it's worth discussion. We can have discussion with the understanding that it could change, but this is our preliminary discussion. Yes.
I have lots of very big thoughts about this and they're all very positive. I know we had talked about, there is a lot of concern of, is this even going to make it out of our sister committee in the Senate? I talked to a lot of people and I'm really excited to see that one not only has it made it out of the Senate, I think it's become stronger. in hopes that more people can support it. And I think I've always viewed part of my job as a legislator to educate. I think we saw that a lot last year with the pay transparency bill. It's a really big responsibility that I take really seriously. And this is like a weird part of my job where people are almost in their most vulnerable when they come to you for leave. And I've dealt with individuals who come to me and they're telling me I have terminal illness. I will be dying. I have 3 months. How can we move forward and what options do I have? So I'm really happy to see that this is moving forward. I hope that it does pass the Senate with no changes. And if there are changes, I hope it's for the better to strengthen the bill, but I will be very supportive and hopefully when it comes to us, we'll vote for with the Senate.
Other thoughts from members of the committee? As well, say what you think. Yes.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, I really appreciate what Rep. Bartley just said, and I feel similarly. And it's exciting to me as a policymaker to work on things that will impact people's lives. And this is certainly currently we did not have equitable unpaid leave, and it left out folks. And I think that based on different family structures, and that's really, really impactful that it's now inclusive. And so I'm very comfortable with the proposed changes and appreciate the Senate's work, because they could have easily just said this doesn't work, but they made some changes that made it palatable for folks that in their body. And I look forward to, I believe it will be on the floor tomorrow, and I'll be watching. So I am happy with what happened, and continue to support the bill in this form. Thanks.
Thank you. Leonora.
I'm just gonna piggyback on all that, just to, the one thing we did not mention, which I think is so important too, is that this is actually also a workforce bill, that is gonna help support the businesses that hire, the employers that want to support their employees. And it just gives everybody a clear, consistent path for how do you deal with these situations that are, you probably dealt, like you just, a terminal illness, or, my nephew passed away and it was like sudden and horrible and tragic, and my cousin lives far from family, and there, we were raised like sisters, and so it was not within the official bereavement categories. And so I think that it's gonna keep employees working, coming back to work and happy and feeling fulfilled. And I think that's important for our labor force.
So I just want to tell you, we have been,
I was listening.
got it. So we're discussing
461.
461 without being 100% sure if that's what will finally come to us, but taking a preliminary discussion. Yes, Mary.
Thank you. I agree with what has been said, especially Representative Bartley and her field. Family should always come first. And if you treat your employees with respect and understanding, they will be so loyal to you. I think this is a really good bill, and I 110% support it.
Any other members of the committee wish to preliminarily say anything? You want to say something?
I just want to add one more thing. One of my biggest pet peeves as like a third party provider is when an employer, because as I'm not the employer, I'm like similar to like a consultant, will call me and say, similar to your experience, I have an employee whose sister has passed away. Our policy is that, or like brother-in-law, our policy is parents get a full week and then siblings get 3 weeks, but like in-laws aren't really included. What should I do? And I'm just like, just give them 7, just give them 7 weeks. Like, that's just my policy. As my philosophy in HR is I always, advocate for the employees. But I cannot tell you how many times I've had that conversation, and I'm really hoping, I'm excited about the facility, so.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Other members of the committee? I strongly support this. I support it conceptually. I support it because it applies to, because it exempts smaller employers, and I know that can be a burden, though they can volunteer to apply. I also support it because of my own personal experience. When I was the managing partner of my law firm, and it was very tiny, less than 10, one of my employees, now a very close friend, her 11-year-old developed brain cancer, and and she eventually passed away. And I remember this, of all the memories that I have of those 25 years, one of the memories that's strongest is my looking at her and just saying, and she was saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can afford to not work, but I just said, just get out of here. Get out of here and don't worry about it. And stay as long as you like. And it was just, I felt validated as a human being at that moment. Also, when my father died, I kept working. It wasn't that hard. I was close to my father. But when my mother died a year later, at an advanced age, she was 92, I went to work and I found that despite my very best efforts, I simply couldn't work. I simply couldn't. I was looking at a page like this, and it's like I couldn't read. It was the strangest thing. I didn't know. I thought, am I depressed? What's going on? In fact, I was unable to work for about 5 to 6 days. And of course, what it was, now I realize it was mourning. I had never experienced this primary feeling that is like anger, love, hate, mourning. It's just that primary feeling. And it was as disabling to me as if I had an illness. So I'm very positive about this for many reasons, and I think it's a good. Any final thoughts on this? Well, it will come back to us, and we will put it on our agenda when it's come back to the House and been referred. Well, I don't know if it will have to be referred to us or not.
It will.
Will it? Because it
I
was
think it just
here.
could, oh, maybe it won't.
It's an H. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'll find out. I'll let you know. By the way, okay. It's all right. I'm going to move on to what I can left. We have a Senate. This bill is now it's in the Senate. What happens when it comes back to us? Either because it's referred to us or it just comes right back to us. What happens procedurally is this: if we like this, as is, we vote to concur in the Senate amendment. Our vote goes to the floor. In other words, it doesn't end with us. It goes to the floor. And one of us stands up and says, we voted to concur by a vote of whatever, and we recommend that the House do the same. Then the House has to vote. If the House votes to concur, it goes to the governor. There is no further action. That's what I didn't know. What happens when the House concurs? The answer is it's transmitted to the governor. It takes a little time to get to the governor from the old days when he used to get it. It takes a little time unless there's a motion made, usually by Patty, to suspend the rules and send it over forthwith if it's a rush, but it goes to the governor. So I think this will come to us next week, likely. And then we'll put it on our agenda and it should get on the floor next week. The floor is going to get more and more crowded. Any last thoughts about this? Okay. So, Sophie, 1,000 thank yous. Where we are now is we have a scheduled tour of the dome of the Capitol building, and it's scheduled for 11 o'clock, which is 55 minutes from now. And we are to meet in the anteroom to the House, right?
Just in front of the House chamber.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
yeah, in front of the House chamber, where, lobbyists stand around. All that, yeah, that's where we're gonna
So
be,
not this card room side.
not the card room.
Where
side,
they're
but-
chasing after the
Flag.
senators.
The
Yeah.
flag room, let's call it.
We're gonna be right in front of the entrance, the main entrance to the house. And we'll do that. Please be there by 11. We'll go up, and those who can and those who can't, we will describe to you in detail.
That's okay, I don't need a description.
Well, it's actually rather surprising and interesting, though some of you who are going and wish to take your life in your hands are welcome to go up to this, to what's her name?
We're not studying.
Joe may know.